Welcome back to Steel Bear Academy. My name is Jonathan. Today I'm going to be showing you a Remington 700. This is a Remington 700 ADL Varmint, chambered in 308. First things first, we'll make sure my gun's unloaded. You heard me grunt, this is a heavy gun. So let me pull back and give you a view of it. So the Remington 700 has been in production for a very long time. Started out in 1962. So it's been continuous production for almost 60 years exactly, right? It is an affordable, strong actioned, that's at least what they say, and I'm sure it's true, but most people probably won't really care about the strong action part of it, but that is one of its claims to fame. It's got a strong action. And this gun is really popular. So this gun is kind of like the Glock or the AR-15, where it has tons and tons of aftermarket support because it's so popular. It is a bolt action rifle. So a bolt action rifle means that it has a bolt, which is this piece here, it slides back and forth. Here's your barrel, you've got your chamber in there. This is an ADL, which means it has a blind magazine. So that means that you can't do anything through the bottom. It has to be loaded through the top. So you would take your round and stick it in there, and this holds 4 in the magazine. So you've got 4 shots before you have to reload. It's got a safety over here. This is on fire, this is on safe. The trigger is not adjustable, and I'll show you that as well. This is got a Nikon Pro Staff on it. So this is not the scope that came with it. I put this scope on it. It's a very nice scope. These are out of production. You can see that it is not threaded. So this gun was a budget gun that I bought, and I mostly wanted to try out a 700 because it's so popular that I figured, well, heck, I gotta try this because it's so popular. It must be popular for a reason. And Remington, the company that makes it, has just changed names and changed hands to being a new company called Rem Arms. And we'll talk about some kind of the negative things about the gun, and particularly how it has been made by Remington prior. But this is going to be a review about a bunch of different things about this gun. Before I get into that, this gun is in 308 and it's chambered in many calibers, and it's configured in many different ways. So this is just one configuration for a Remington 700. There's tons and tons of different ways you can configure a rifle, particularly a bolt action rifle. And I have a whole video about how to pick your features that you want for a hunting rifle. So if you're interested in learning about the different features that I'm going to cover in this video very briefly, go check out that video, because that one goes into much more depth about pros and cons and why you'd like those things and not like these things. I'm just going to list them here and give a very brief version of it here. So first off, this is an ADL, which means it is a blind magazine. There is also a BDL, which has a hinged floor plate so that you could push a little button here and open up a little trap door and dump all your rounds out of your magazine. This is kind of an interesting point about why you would want that or not want that. Most rifles nowadays are using some sort of detachable box magazine. So you'd take, like a magazine that's got 4 rounds in it, then you insert it into the bottom of the gun, and then you would start working your bolt back and forth. The blind magazine is becoming less and less popular. However, it does have some advantages and disadvantages. The main advantage is that you'll never accidentally lose your magazine because it's built into it, right? The downside is you can't reload as quickly, meaning you can't grab a brand new fresh magazine and stick it in the bottom and reload quickly, right? That's the benefit of a detachable box magazine. However, in a hunting application, that is really mostly irrelevant, in my opinion. So I would say don't think too much that that is like antiquated and has no place. I think it is less trendy, or it's less popular now, and maybe the benefits are just greater to having the magazine versus people who don't want to lose their magazine. I hear people lose their magazines quite frequently. So it's just, you know, why would you want that? For one, it's cheaper. And as I said, you won't accidentally lose your magazine, which in a hunting environment might actually happen. The finish on this gun, I guess I would describe it as a black oxide. It is not Parkerized. It doesn't really hold oil that great. I feel like it just kind of sits on it. This is not very oily right now, but I would say it's very easily scratched. I'm not sure if you can see it, but there are many, many scratch marks along this gun. However, to be fair, I don't really try to keep it from getting scratched. This is not a gun that I would say is heirloom type quality, but it's a thing to think about, that if you want your gun to not be scratched, this finish is pretty bad for it. We'll talk more about the finish in a little bit, but it's black oxide. I think you might be able to get stainless in this gun, or at least stainless 700s. The barrel profile on this gun, it is a thick profiled barrel. So there's kind of a couple different profiles of barrel. I would say pencil or hunting is thin, then medium, and then this is thick or heavy profile. The reason you'd want heavy profile is because this gun is set up to be I guess a varmint gun, or some sort of predator getting gun. And the reason why you'd have heavy profile is so that you can repeatedly shoot rounds in quick succession without your barrel heating up as fast and therefore losing accuracy once it heats up. Additionally, it probably makes it a little more inherently accurate to have a stiffer barrel due to material. However, it is also very heavy. So even though this gun, the stock weighs nearly nothing, this gun is still quite heavy because of this thick barrel. It's just a big old bar of steel. It's quite thick. I also want to point out that there's no threaded barrel. So this one does not have a threaded barrel. However, you could get one with a threaded barrel. You just need medium profile or higher, medium profile or thicker. So you can't really thread a pencil barrel or a hunting or sporting barrel, but you can thread the medium ones or greater. The stock, as you can see, it's got some paint on it. This is peel away spray paint. So if you want, you just peel it off. And the reason I put that on there is because I wanted to see what it's going to look like if it was black. So it's kind of camouflaged underneath it. It's like mossy oak or whatever. The stock is, I think, pretty decent. I will say that I don't like that it's got this, how it gets wider here. I don't really like that. I feel like it runs into my hands when it recoils. Additionally, these sling swivel studs, this one runs into my hand when I fire it, if I'm holding it in a way that is comfortable. I want to hold it here, but if I hold it here, this thing smacks into me when the gun recoils backwards. Not my favorite. However, it's got two of them, which is indicative of that one of them is to be used for a sling, one of them is to be used for a bipod, which is also for kind of like tactical bolt action rifles. It's also got another sling swivel stud back here. I think all 700s have a Remington Supercell recoil pad, which is this. It is a really good recoil pad. I think everybody who's ever felt it or tried it likes it a lot. It definitely absorbs a lot of recoil. They put them on some 870s, and I really like them. I think that is a very good feature that they put on this gun. 308 is not a particularly harsh recoiling caliber, especially when it's in such a heavy gun. But this recoil pad, I probably shot, 50, 60 rounds the other day, and my shoulder was perfectly fine. No problem whatsoever. Felt very pleasant. The stock also does not allow a free floated barrel. So it kind of has, where the barrel is sitting, there's these ridges that the barrel rests on. So the stock is touching the barrel, which is not a desired feature. You'd prefer to have it free floated. However, hopefully I'm gonna show you in a picture that did not detract from accuracy much, if at all. So those are the features of this gun. Let's talk about the accuracy, because I think this is really where the rubber hits the road. A bolt-action rifle, if it's going to be used for hunting, needs to be very accurate, or at least accurate enough. So I talk about in my other video that 1 MOA is perfectly acceptable and is, most hunting applications, 1 MOA is great. For those of you who don't know, a real quick rundown of very simplified version of saying 1 MOA. If your rifle is a 1 MOA capable rifle, it generally means that it is capable of holding a group that is 1 inch in diameter at 100 yards. So that means that the mechanical accuracy of the gun, it is able to consistently keep its rounds within 1 inch. So any variation between shots, it all fits into 1 inch at 100 yards. And that's kind of how we describe accuracy. So for hunting, that is perfectly fine. I would say, unless you're shooting really, really tiny targets, very far distances, this is a Varmint gun. You don't really need 308 for that, but let's say it was in 223. You're looking at very good accuracy. You don't, unless you're shooting like 500 yards, then I think that is perfectly acceptable. But maybe you are not. I just want to say it amazed me how accurate it was for how bad of a reputation Remington has gotten. And so that's where we're kind of going to go into next. The gun itself, I think, is fantastic, and it's unfortunate that it is tainted by a very storied past, let's say. So Remington is a company that is, I think, America's oldest company, oldest firearms company, I think. And as I mentioned, unfortunately, it's gone through a ton of organizational changes. That's a nice way of saying it. Basically, it's gone through some different bankruptcies and has changed hands many times over the years to different conglomerates that hold it. And I don't think any of those things have done good things for Remington. So I want to first start off by saying they're probably the most lasting. They used to be really known for really great guns, like in the 60s and probably the 70s and maybe up to the 80s. They were really known for great guns. And if you've ever been interested in any Remington 870s, those old 870s are the things that people are always gushing on about, saying they're so great. And I think mostly it's due to the quality control and how much effort they put into their guns to make them very good rather than just budget friendly, although they often met a good budget as well. And I think that for me, the thing that stands out to me most in the current production of Remington stuff is the finish. That the finishes on these guns, I have, I think, 3 different Remington guns that are all current production, and the finish on all of them is pretty much terrible, meaning they rust very easily. And as I mentioned, the finish just kind of scuffs off. And I've refinished one of them, and it basically rubs off with with sandpaper. Not very impressive in terms of corrosion resistance. So I think the finishes leave something to be desired, and that is a well-deserved criticism about Remington. Remington also had this big scandal about the X-Mark trigger, which I think was in the 90s. And basically, I think some people got hurt or perhaps died, and as a result, there was a big recall on these triggers. And I think, 60 Minutes or some TV program did a special on them and basically ripped them a new one about it. And they took a huge reputation loss because of it that I think is still being felt even now. Although I think people of my generation, millennial, I think you would have to search it out to find it, because I think my generation wasn't really aware of that unless they were really in the industry or their parents were really into it. Maybe that's just me speaking from my experience, but I don't think most people my age bring it up, if ever. But it is something that I think the older generations still see and feel, and it taints the brand. As far as reliability goes, I had some issues with this rifle, and anytime somebody has some issues of reliability with a gun, it gets sometimes blown out of proportion, but also sometimes it's true. So just, anytime anybody has some reliability issues, there can always be user error involved. Somebody is incorrectly using the gun. It could also be company caused, meaning it is a defect with the gun. And it's really hard to know which of those things it is. It could be ammunition related, blah, blah, blah. There's so many things. However, Remington, it does seem to have earned that reputation because of a fault of the company, not some other thing. And the one that comes to mind most is the 870. The Remington 870 had a lot of extraction issues of the chambers not being polished well enough, and other issues as well. But with this gun, I found that the only issues I ever have are some feeding issues of getting rounds out of the magazine and into the chamber. So when you do that, you would load up your magazine, stick 4 rounds in there, and then when you chamber a round, you want to assertively push that bolt fast and strongly forward, just like you would be doing with like a semi-auto if you were going to allow the spring to push it forward. You don't want to gingerly, slowly close it like that. It needs a good assertive push, just like a pump action shotgun needs a good assertive pump forward and backwards. And when I was doing that, I was being assertive and I was doing good thrusts of the bolt, and I would still get some hang-ups where it would either the round would get stuck on the chamber and would kind of bend, and then I'd have to take that round out and put it to the side. And I got maybe like 10 of those out of maybe 300 rounds that I've put through this gun. So not a lot. And in a hunting gun, the chambering of your round perhaps could be done ahead of time. It's not like a in the moment necessary thing for hunting. However, it's just kind of annoying, and I would expect a gun to be 100% reliable. Anything that's not 100% reliable, I'm pretty lukewarm on. Like, I just don't have any place in my collection or desire to have an unreliable gun, even if it's only, less than 5% of the time. So reliability, Remington has earned a bad reputation for that. Now, with that being said, I still think that this gun is very good overall, and I want to give it some ratings, and we'll kind of go through some of the reasons why I do that. And as always, my ratings are based on all the guns that I've ever shot. So when I'm comparing the trigger of this gun, I'm comparing it to all triggers, not just of bolt-action rifles, but all triggers of every gun that I've ever shot. So unless I specifically say otherwise, keep in mind I'm not comparing it to other bolt-action rifles. I'll mention if I am. The first thing I want to cover is the trigger. So this is the X Mark Pro trigger. So that means it is a rebranding, let's say, of that X Mark trigger that had all those problems. And it's, been basically shown to be perfectly fine, perfectly safe. Or, as safe as a trigger is, right? It doesn't hurt anybody like the other one did. So it's a fine product, not defective. So as you can see, it is a non-adjustable trigger. So let's Put that on fire. I'll try to pull it so you can see it. It has no take up. It just, you put resistance and it fires. Try that again. So I'm just applying more and more weight, more and more weight, more and more weight, bang, and it fires. I describe this like a single stage trigger. Also, a feature I forgot to mention is it does have a cocked indicator. So this little plunger here, when the hammer, or when the trigger is not cocked and the hammer's not cocked, then it doesn't protrude. As soon as you pull it, it shows that it's not cocked. It's just kind of a feature that I forgot to mention, but I think most people know that if their gun is cocked or not, but it's just kind of a nice thing to show. I would give this trigger an 8 out of 10. It is single stage, and I think it's very good. There's no take up. The weight's a little heavier than I'd like. However, I only really notice that when I'm dry firing. And your trigger weight is a personal preference. I think pretty much like for hunting rifles, it's somewhere between like, you know, as low as 3 pounds up to, I don't know, as high as 5. And some people like lower and some people like higher weights. But in shooting it, I didn't really notice it being heavy. I just noticed it being very consistent and very, it doesn't have any travel, which is really nice. So as you're pulling the trigger, it's not like a Glock trigger, for example, where you take up the slack and then there's kind of some mush that you pull through and it's not super consistent on where that break is gonna happen. This one, it's just, you're at the wall, there is no movement, and then you apply pressure, bang, it fires. I think it's very good. It's not adjustable, so a lot of people are not gonna like that because adjustable triggers are kind of the new trend. I think adjustable is kind of empirically more, it has more utility. You know, you can do more things with it empirically, but I think it's a great trigger. So 8 out of 10. It's, I think it could only be a little bit better if it was lighter, but that's my preference. I'd prefer it to be lighter. For reliability, I would give this a 9 out of 10 in that, you know, I mentioned it had some feeding issues, but the second time I took it out, or well, no, the third time I think I took it out and I shot maybe 60 rounds with it most recently, it didn't have any of those issues. So perhaps it was a matter of break-in. I generally don't usually give a gun a free pass on break-in time. As far as I'm concerned, it should work 100% out of the box every time. But since it didn't have any last time, I would say that I could be persuaded to being a 10 out of 10 on reliability. However, it had some last time, so it's going to take a while for it to build a reputation with me at least. It would need more testing, but pretty good for reliability. Not perfect, but pretty good. For durability, I would give this an 8 out of 10 for durability. And the thing that it loses out on is because of the finish. So I think in terms of the parts and the robustness of how long this gun is going to last, it's going to last a long time, I think. So long as we keep it oiled. As long as I keep it oiled. That's the only condition, I think. That finish is just not, it's not something you can count on. So you're gonna have to keep it very oiled. I would say if you're gonna use it for hunting, make sure that it is kind of controlled environment hunting. You know, like if you're gonna go out on your porch and you've got a big prairie, you can shoot some varmints on your land. That might be an application where, you know, you're not going out in the swamp and you're not going out in the forest and it's not raining and you've got a nice covered porch and you can go clean this right afterward and put oil on it, etc. Right? It's just not super durable for the finishes shortcomings. For carryability, I would give this a 2 out of 10. It is very heavy and it is not pleasant to carry. You could see me, I was kind of groaning just picking it up, and granted I'm not in a very ergonomic spot to pick this gun up, but it's pretty heavy, It's a hefty chunk. However, I will say that if you had a different version of this gun, I'm sure it would be very good to carry. The pencil profile with a stock that is lighter. This is the Varmint stock, so it's extra wide here. With the thinner, lighter profile gun, I think it would probably get like a 7 out of 10, 7 or 8 out of 10. I've held those before, and I thought they felt pretty light as like a Savage Axis or a Ruger American, which we'll get to in competitive options. Carryability on this gun is terrible, like 2 out of 10. However, this is not a gun that is meant to be carried. So go check out that other video I made. This gun is not set up for that. This is set up to be a bench rest gun or a varmint hunting gun where you set up on a porch or take it in your little buggy and drive someplace and then start shooting, not hike with it and hump it on your back or carry it stock through the woods, that kind of thing. It's not set up for that. So don't be too hard on it for that purpose. But I will say this gun is not fun to carry. For shootability, I would give this an 8 out of 10. I think it's very pleasant to shoot. And I think a big part of that is the recoil pad. And as I mentioned, it's quite heavy. So, extra weight on a gun reduces the felt recoil. I will say, be mindful that you don't put your face too close to the scope. The first time I shot this gun, I got a little overconfident, let's say, and a little lackadaisical, and I didn't hold the stock tight enough to my shoulder, and this lens piece popped me in the forehead. So mind your eye relief. For value, I would give this a 9 out of 10. Which is really, really good. When I bought this gun, it did not come with this scope, mind you. So it came with its own little combo scope, like I think it was a 4-12 or a 3-9. It was just kind of a throwaway cheap scope. I wouldn't have kept it on there. But I do use it for a 22 that I put it on instead. Just, I didn't want to invest more money in that 22, but I did want to use a scope on it. So it had its purpose. I bought this for $350, maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And I think for then it was a very good bargain. And for now, when I look at the prices now, I think they're closer to $550 for this exact gun. Other guns that are similar to it are around that same price too. And I think for the money, it gives amazing accuracy. So 1 MOA for a $350 or $550 gun, either way, is pretty darn good. The durability, takes a hit for that, but I think that it's really, really good value. To be able to hit that consistently and that easily is quite impressive, in my opinion. However, I think there are, it didn't get a 10 out of 10 because I think there are cheaper guns, meaning less expensive, guns that meet that same quality or meet that same accuracy, but actually improve in quality. So I'll give you some examples of guns that I think would do that. But basically, other guns can meet that accuracy, but they also don't have the downside of the durability problem and may even excel in the weight, the lower weight. So as I mentioned, the 700 has a huge range of options and different configurations. So while this is the budget 700, there are more expensive 700s as well. And the same goes for all these other guns I'm about to mention. So we're looking at the budget range. For competitive options, I think the biggest competitor is the Savage Axis, either the Savage Axis 1 or the Savage Axis 2. The difference between those being one has an AccuTrigger, the other doesn't. The Savage 110, which is kind of their flagship, Savage's flagship model that is similar to the 700. Many variations of that gun. The Ruger American, the Thompson Center Compass, the Remington 783 actually, which is kind of like the Savage Axis Remington product. It's like a step below in terms of robustness of features, and instead opts for, let's say, simplicity of manufacturing and less options and less features. But that gun actually, from what I understand, can outperform this gun, even at a cheaper price, like $300, and at much lower weight as well. So don't discount that product either. I think the 783 probably kicks this gun's butt in a lot of ways. The Howa 1500, and by that same token, the Weatherby Vanguard, which are essentially the same gun. And then there's the Mossberg Patriot and MVP. I've never had any experience shooting the Mossberg rifles, but from what I hear, they perform pretty well. So I can't give a glowing recommendation of those, but from what I hear, I think those ones are in the same price category and probably can perform pretty similarly. Gosh, so what do I think of this? I think for under $500, you know, I got mine for $350, and then the scope was another $200, and the rings were another $35. For under $500, let's say, I think this gun is very good. Now, if you got it for $350, then I'd say this gun is fantastic for the price. Again, the durability gives me a little bit of pause for anything that you might use it for in humid places or wet places. Just be very, very mindful that you re-oil that thing. But for plinking, just range use, any controlled environment critter getting, I think it works very well. Remington's reputation for poor quality control is well earned over the past 30 years, but I just want to say, don't assume that all Remingtons are bad products. So they are, quality control is about consistency. Well, sometimes they do pretty well, and sometimes they do really bad. So now you may not be willing to accept the risk of maybe you got a lemon, and maybe I just got lucky, but I think this gun was very good, and I'm about to trade this gun off to a friend for some money, and I don't think badly of it, but I am looking to try something else. But I am also happy that it's going to a friend so that I can go shoot it whenever I want to, because me and him, we had a blast shooting this the other day. It was a really fun gun to shoot. Now, I will say that, we started this by talking about how Remington used to be. I think that if you go look online, you'll see some very beautiful Remington 700s of the past, just like there are beautiful Remington 870s of the past. And while those might be mostly gone, this is a kind of an ugly looking gun compared to those beautiful blued finishes of yesterday. I think that the current Remington 700 is still a great design, and I think it's a great option for anybody who wants a budget hunting rifle. So with that, I will say, I'd say give it a try. Yeah, I can't guarantee you it's going to be perfect, and that's the nature of Remington, but hopefully Rem Arms will correct some of that quality control issues, and there will be another day when you can say that I could say I would recommend a Remington, a Rem Arms product, because I know that it will be very good out of the box. Let's hope that day comes. Thank you very much for listening, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.